and welcome to this talk series on what is ceremonial grade cacao. I'm going to be talking to Laura again. This is part 5 of our series. We're looking at social impact, responsibility, and relationship. We've already looked at a few other topics, so let me just call Laura up here. So if you've been following us already, you'll notice it's quite a big topic at the moment, and so we're breaking it down to different categories. Everybody is joining us. We're just getting Laura on here. All right. Laura, if you can just request to join one more time. There we go. Hello.
Hello.
Hi. So, welcome. Here we are at part 5 of our series. I've just given a brief introduction on today's topic. I know you always have something beautiful to add that I always forget to say. So I'm going to hand over to you to do the other part of the introduction.
Yes, today is going to be a short one because we touched on many of the processes before. So it's more so like a sum up, I think, that we want to use today as a reminder.
Cool. So there's 3 words, or we could say terms, that we're going to be looking at, and then just get some questions at the end that you could ask your supplier or practitioner. So social impact, which is linked into responsibility, and I think the umbrella for all of this is relationship. So when we start to work with cacao in a sacred way, it is about developing relationship and being in right relationship, not only with ourselves and our immediate community, but obviously with the land where cacao is from and the people that work with cacao, and then all the people between the farmers and us. So that whole piece around the heart and relationship. So from your research, your experience, what would you say is the best way to go about this part, being in right relationship with ceremonial cacao?
Right, to build relationships. That's probably as simple as it is. And this, even just by us saying and completely, repeating the importance of asking your cacao supplier, that is a piece of building a relationship, isn't it? It's starting with communication. It's and you can also look at your relationship with yourself and with others, and where you are maybe afraid of asking the right questions. You're afraid of finding out the truth, or you don't want to be too much in asking. All these little things. I think they, as with insert without, they reveal something within yourself often. And so, is it something that where are you coming from? Again, the intention is felt. So if you ask someone with that true intention of curiosity and compassion and also awareness for cacao, you will be met with a beautiful response. And if you're not met with a beautiful response, then it's a very good indicator to run the other way and find someone else that honors that. I think it's really looking at how am I being met in my connection, right? Am I honoring a connection, and am I coming from an open-hearted, open-minded place? And am I being met with the same way back?
Yeah. I love that. It's such a simple way of stepping into this space rather than getting all caught up in social impact. What is that? What's my piece to play in here? Surely it's just how you would want to be treated in a response to be receiving that. And if you're not, there's, like we've been saying, these red flags. If there's a lack of transparency, if there's any kind of defensiveness or just being met with aggression or animosity, then there's just something a bit off there. So listen to that, because if we are coming from a place of, on the other side, if we are wanting to share this openly, lovingly from the heart, and there's that relationship we've already developed with ourselves, then that's the way we're going to be putting them information across. And if we have something to hide, we're probably not going to be coming across with that, or if we're not coming from the right place, from a place of heart relationship. So I think this is something we've gone into, like we say, quite a bit in the last few chats, and how we can then link that back directly into the farming communities and those that process cacao is actually to say, when it comes to responsibility piece and the social impact of us making the right decisions as a consumer, it means that then everyone gets fairly compensated from the farmers through the, you know, the people working in the workshops, processing the cacao, right the way through. Anything you want to add on that, Fran?
Yes, here is also an important piece I want to add is context. So when we talk about connection and relationship building, it's always also important to have the context in mind of where you're coming from and where other people are coming from. And that goes to the social impact of cacao as well. So when let's take the differentiation that we made before between fair trade and direct trade. Like in our heads, that fair trade logo has a really good stand. We're like, cool, we're doing something good. You're buying that fair trade chocolate, can't be bad, right? However, we might need context for this. So, for example, fair trade, it's a certificate that people need to buy. So, and if you are a small farm that, like, you know, is really operating in also organic, right? It's another certificate, and you're operating in South America, Central America, right? You know, everything is that is given, like it's organic. You know, you have a family business, so obviously you want to pay everyone fair, but you don't have the funds because you are in the context of the third world country where you can't just pay for a Western standard certificate. Then that certificate, in a way, becomes quite meaningless for the actual integrity of that farm. So, because only because of them not having it doesn't mean that they are not good or not organic, for example. And on the other hand, fair trade can even mean that, yes, some Western person that either owns the farm or advertises or owns the brand could buy that certificate, but does the fair trade really mean the best prices? It might, no, it actually doesn't. It just means the most minimal price, right? The most, kind of like the what is deemed okay in a way, right? And not bad. That's basically it. So we are looking at direct trade, where the money does go directly to the people that harvest or process the cacao. And again, that is a context. So also, what is a good and fair price? And there's things that we also don't all know the answer to. This is really an ongoing process as the market evolves and as the demand of cacao evolves and all sort of things. These are contextual things. So being curious about it is important, and not coming from a point of view of like there's only one right answer, because us Westerners do this a lot, and that's why we have these certificates, right? Because we want to have a standard and we want to just have it easy for our mind to know, oh, it's labeled this way, so I can buy it. Same with the Ceremonial-grade Cacao label, which we now know and established that it doesn't say anything, it's just a name. But it helps our brain, and we're like, cool, that must be good then, so I don't need to have discernment or do my research. And it comes back again to the relationship with yourself and your own environment and what you're willing to put the effort in. And when we talk about relationships, there is at some point going to be an effort that you have to be willing to do.
Yeah. Thank you. It just seems like we keep coming back to the same points, and it's so important: discernment, educating ourselves, asking questions, and the context. I love how you bring that in again, because the context is going to be different from country to country, from source to source. Even within a country, nowadays just saying, from Guatemala, that's not enough. There's a lot of farms in Guatemala, and some of them even go with the big industrial areas rather than the small direct trade areas. So just saying country of origin is not enough, like saying fair trade is not enough, and organic and ceremonial grade. So to ask more questions and educate ourselves as we go. Something that was coming for me while you were speaking was also just to say that we should care then, just knowing this information. We could also not care. So we could say, I don't really care if somebody's actually not getting the right cut, but we kind of all under the assumption that we actually want to do good, coming from that right relationship from ourselves. I would like to know, I do care. I care that the money that I spend, that most of it is actually going to go to the people that work on the farms, that they're able to support their families, and not just to some giant corporation that then are cutting corners and not giving what is actually rightly deserved back on the land. So there's an element there of care, and that's only going to happen when we have that right relationship with ourselves. So it feeds into a beautiful cycle, cacao helping us to develop this relationship with ourselves, and then care about the community, our immediate community, but also the community at large in the world, and then of course Mother Nature and what's happening between the actual farmers and their land. And so this idea of relationship, social impact, responsibility, it really goes across the board of not just the farmers and their land or who's buying from the farmers, but also how we are as consumers making our choices and what's our relationship with ourselves, because that's going to impact then our mindset of do we care enough then to actually be conscious and to be discerning and to put the time and the energy into educating ourselves. It's quite a big one.
And it's an important one because we talking these chats that we're having, right, are mainly for people that work with cacao. So you're watching, you're already a cacao facilitator, or you have a personal practice with cacao, and in ceremony, in ritual, or somehow you honor cacao as a medicine and as a whole food that can help you for your personal development or for your physical health, mental, emotional state, etc. So you're already in a context of valuing and giving birth to that plant, knowing it's not just a nice treat. And therefore, we have established a context, right? That where we know it is important to differentiate between just the normal supermarket chocolate and ceremonial-grade cacao, and even within the term ceremonial-grade cacao, we can differentiate. So we have that context here already. So, and like Fran said, there has to be a care. There is a care, otherwise you wouldn't watch this. And you want to, you also care for your participants, if you're a facilitator, or for your friends and family that you share cacao with, because you care for them to have the best effect, the best journey, the best healing, or whatever that you can bring to them, and the best cacao therefore as well. And let me just say this to context as well, to give an example. I'm not the biggest fan of quotes. This might come a bit funny, but I used to get a bit triggered when people like post quotes on Instagram. Why is that? Because it often lacks the context. And in our society with social media, especially these like short format social medias, we don't have the nuance anymore. And so when you put a quote, the quote might be, the quote is always amazing. It's not about the quotes being wrong. It's just how you put them into a context. Usually they're being taken out of really big essays or long books where there's context established. But if you put them in this like self-healing world, they can be used for spiritual bypassing. And one very known quote is like, intention is everything. And there's a yes and no. There's always a yes and a no, because intention in ceremonial work is everything. At the same time, it's nothing when it's not followed through with some sort of action. So intention is not enough when you buy ceremonial-grade cacao to facilitate ceremony. That you have to somehow also put in the action that is required of you to stay true and aligned to this intention. Otherwise, the teachings of cacao won't fully bloom within you, right?
Yes, you put that so beautifully. Thank you. I can so relate. Even after each of these calls, just putting in the captions, the information, I really struggle just to put a one-liner there, because I have to say, well, in the context of our conversation, and the context is that we also don't know everything, and we are learning as we go, and this is our opinion, and it's within the context of the globe, and within each country there's going to be context. So it's it's really a big field. So yeah, we need to write essays and not captions and quotes.
Nothing wrong with
that won't go down too well.
You guys keep on posting quotes, but maybe
we keep on posting quotes.
Why do you relate to the quote? How it helps you? These kind of things. And because we always have the different extremes, because sides we come from, the different perspectives. So if you come from a perspective of just mindlessly just doing a ceremony because this is the next trend and you just want to hold, want to be a priestess, whatever, then you definitely need to put in some intention and find out what is the ceremony about, why are you doing this, right? This is very important work. And at the same time, if you know all this, but there's a lack of embodiment, then obviously we need the action that follows. And one thing that came to me in this as well is when we I lost my thread. Just heard my little boy starting to get a bit unsettled. I was like, God dang, snap out of it. Fran, I give it over to you. Maybe I'll remember later.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned earlier the word, these nuances, and I think something like the responsibility piece as well. I'll speak for myself as my relationship has deepened with the work with cacao and understanding the space of ceremony versus ritual versus circle versus sitting with cacao. In many ways, I love to work with cacao, but as my relationship has deepened into these spaces and the more respect I have for them, I feel there's a lot more responsibility, and I'm sure you relate, Laura, hence why we're having these discussions. So perhaps that it starts with intention. Oh, I just want to work with cacao. I just want to hold a sacred space for nice space for people, and that's beautiful. And then as we develop along our journey, as we go deeper into our journey, we start to find we want to educate ourselves more and maybe bring in this piece and this piece. And for example, you and I now, we're like, well, our next piece is actually, not to say it's the next level, but it's just we feel that we're at a level now of responsibility, not level, I said it again, but we're at a phase where we feel the responsibility piece for us is to be a voice. And that's not going to be everybody's journey. So even the word responsibility, it has to be in context, which is why we're offering these talks and just going to have some questions at the end as usual that you can maybe ask. That kind of just come from our discussions between each other, some ideas we've been talking about the other side of Instagram for some time now. Yeah, I don't know if you want to say anything more before we hand over those questions.
Yes, so responsibility, it comes back to your own sovereignty, so your choice, what you do. And again, we put that context in of our Western society, right? So when we talk about cacao, especially cacao facilitation, cacao, we have a completely different context to the indigenous cultures. So we work with a plant medicine from a faraway country, where the cultures and the local indigenous people have worked with for thousands of years. Yeah, so we have worked with a form of cacao with chocolate maybe for the last 500 years, but not really with the whole food nor the medicine, right? So this is very, very, very recent. And now the funny thing is that we think that we just can take anything quickly, make it our own, and don't even need to train, because there's no, so to say, Western standardized certificate of the cacao facilitator, right? So people just drink it because they drink it always. It's not a plant medicine in the form of master plant teaching that is, a bit psychedelic, and therefore maybe, maybe I need to learn something. Cacao is so gentle, and we feel like, we're just doing, something nice and it's easy, and then we learn it's actually so much deeper. But so many people jump into this without a proper training, and again, context, which is so funny, is the Western world. We come, especially when you're in this spiritual community, it's probably in a way it's good that we don't need a specific training, because we come from an academic background. I come from an academic background that indoctrinated into me that I'm only worth and valuable as a human being if I have a certain graduation, or if I have put in years of effort and training. And there's two sides of this. That's actually this whole institution of someone giving me the certificates in order for me to be something of value. It's bullshit. We get that. But at the same time,
the outsourcing of value,
the external validation versus training, apprenticeship, and embodied experience is very, very important. So don't confuse a mind training, like a heady, rational training, with an embodied experience. So now you could say, then I can just do it myself and I learn by doing. Yes, absolutely can you. Absolutely. But you have to be sovereign and take the responsibility to make sure you really put in the work. And it's not just like, I have drank cacao since I've been drinking cacao for 5 years, or I have the embodied experience. That's not the same. That's not the same. Have you drank it really, like consciously in ritual and ceremony? Have you really put the effort in to do the inner work that comes with it? Have you sat with Cacao, asked her, you know, have you been in touch, in relationship with Cacao? Have you been to places, or have you been in relationship with the people, the indigenous? That's a complete different thing. Plus then, that only gives you 5 years of drinking Cacao, only gives you the embodied experience of drinking Cacao. It doesn't give you the embodied experience of holding space for others with Cacao. So then there's another two distinctions of holding space in general, like also in a Western way, like who are you holding space for and why? Intention. And then how does that translate with holding space with Cacao? And this is also something that we still all have to learn. Like both Fran and I, like we are passionate about holding space, and we are powerful in that because we learned the way that is true to our roots in some way, right? And so Cacao comes in and ignites that and helps that, but we're also still learning from the indigenous and still have to, because there's something that we just can't do with just reading one book, and that is an understanding, an inner standing that the indigenous cultures have by living with the land. And unfortunately, not all have that. It's not a given that all indigenous people have that, by the way, because many are westernized as well. So even there is a context that's needed, right? And there's also obviously Westerners that have been brought up homeschooled and on the land and are in connection with nature, but like on broad general terms, us Westerners are more deconnected to nature than the indigenous. So that's something I just want to say here, and this is why it's important for us that we, when we think about our privileges of being able to have smartphones, have social media, can take courses, can take trainings, can go study, can travel, that we use this privilege and the money that we have, instead of supporting, I don't know, we can, you know, we make our nails or our hair or whatever, like, but if we are really working with Ceremonial-grade Cacao, then we have to make sure to use a big part of what we can use to support the indigenous and the cultures and fuel that back into Cacao in some way, shape or form. And it's really about reassessing where your responsibility lies there, and what, again, is important to you, and how can you then take the action to fuel that.
Thank you. Another piece to add to this, which you're basically saying, but different words, is how can we be in service to the medicine instead of just in service to our ego? You know, now we work with Cacao, now we've done a training, or we've done our own training, and how much of that is in service to the world? Because there's many ways of working with Cacao, sure, but the responsibility piece is actually asking us also to take action and be living in the world, be part of community, be part of nature. Just to bring this right back to part of the topic, which is also how are we giving back to the communities? It doesn't mean that we have to necessarily always be going and doing, let's just take the terrible way of saying it, the charity work. But at least then sourcing your cacao more consciously, and making sure that the revenue, most of it, or as much as possible, is going to the farmers.
And that's bare minimum, right? But that's enough. That is a good minimum. That should be bare minimum, I think. Like making sure you've got a great cacao that you work with. And from there on, the more you work with cacao, it will automatically bring you on that journey of then wanting to have more socially or responsibly.
Exactly. So there's a beautiful circle, and I find, you know, now I can see it. In the beginning I didn't, but now I can see it, how the conversation around the social impact, the responsibility, the relationship, it's so intertwined. And it's just part of this bigger cycle of being in service to the medicine, wanting to support, knowing that I can do that by my choices as a consumer, how I can just live in my sovereignty, be in reverence, be of service to others, and it feeds me as well. So there's just this beautiful reciprocity again, and that's how we started this whole conversation series, was around the sacred reciprocity. So even though we, you know, through the conversation series have been breaking down everything into smaller categories, it's all related. It is all related, and it starts with the awareness which is why we're doing this, right? Coming back to our context and our intention is to create more awareness by sharing what we do know so that others can just have a few questions to ask their supplier or their practitioner, because it's all interlinked.
And then also, don't also feel guilty. Because I want to say this as well, because again, context, different people, different ends of life. I also have so many students that come from the side of like being insecure and feeling almost guilty and thinking they don't know enough and they're not worthy to do this work and they need more courses or more trainings. Don't confuse that with, with guilting you to it.
Yeah.
Absolutely not. As soon as you're asking yourself that, you probably don't need more, but actually in your head you actually need to start doing and bringing your gifts to the world, by the way. I just want to say this as well.
For sure. For sure.
And by already you're being, questioning yourself, that's already a great way to start. But don't let this hold you back. Actually, let it fuel your fire and bring you forward in service with Cacao and yourself.
Love that.
And continue to ask Cacao. Sit with her. Like, actually, just sit with her. So many people forget that step. When you have a question and you're not sure, take a cup of Cacao and take an hour or two, and really sit with her and ask. And see, and usually it won't even take an hour. Usually after 5 minutes you have the answer anyway, because she tells you. And then do that. That's the next step. Actually follow through with what your heart is telling you. And you'll soon be guided. And not everyone will have to travel to South America, or not everyone will have to make sure that the social impact is good, because if you have a great supplier, you don't have to make sure, because you've already established that relationship, so you know that the relationships are being taken care of there. So maybe your part then is to build a better relationship with your environment, with your nature, or with your friends and family, or with yourself. Also, healing yourself in some way to become more connected is important, and bring that to your community.
Yeah, and that relationship chain, that's actually one of these questions, and it doesn't have to be the direct farmer that you buy from or the cooperative. That's probably not going to be possible nowadays unless you're actually living in those countries. So if you don't live in the equatorial belt where cacao grows, you're going to have some kind of a supplier, but their relationship to the growers or the cooperative or the association, what's that relationship? And then what's your relationship with your supplier? And your supplier cannot be a supermarket chain. There's no relationship there.
Yes.
So, and Laura, just, before we get into those, giving those questions out, I just want to highlight what you're saying. And normally we actually start our chats like this, just saying we're not here to shame, we're actually just here to provide information, and we all start somewhere, and we've learned by making mistakes as well, kind of stepping in the poo on the social impact side or the responsibility side, or, well, let me speak for myself, I've probably done that. Without even realizing it. And the fact that people are still listening to this right now means that there shouldn't be any guilt. It's just that we conditioned and we lived in a certain way for a certain amount of time, and by still engaging in this conversation that we're having means that you are ready to just step in and take the next step. So just start asking some questions, and rather than let this hold you back, because you and I are very passionate, very fueled by this, of course. We're gonna support somebody taking right action, no matter where you are. So even if you are, you've been working with powders, for example, from a supermarket, and all of a sudden now you just informed that that's not ceremonial grade cacao by listening to this or somebody else, and you take the next step, that's taking right action in the right direction. So, we all start somewhere.
And the next step would, for example, be, that's something that I highlight a lot, is that when I started doing cacao ceremonies, like what I did is I started to raise awareness, right, about the difference, because I was working with people that had never heard of it before, so obviously I needed to explain a bit further, but I also therefore made sure that I'm differentiating between the chocolate history that has really bad, exploitation and colonialism and such, versus what we're now trying to bring forth is the whole food of cacao and medicine, which doesn't stop there, because I was then planting the seed for those people who not only become aware of their cacao consumption, but also the consumption in general, what they buy in the supermarkets or on the markets, or is it regional or seasonal, and all these things, and it continues to grow. So So when you're already buying amazing ceremonial-grade cacao, or maybe now you actually had to double check and maybe change the supplier, that's also a great action step. And now you feel like, oh yeah, I'm feeling in a good relationship with them. I trust them. Wonderful. Then next step is maybe to tell your participants or your friends about it, and ask what they use, and let them try it, and so on. And I tend to relationship with my son now, because it's getting closer to dinner and evening time, and need to honor that connection of real life parenting as well.
Honor that relationship. Well, listen, if you want to jump off, I can just do the last bit. It won't take longer. Do you want to stay on, or just jump off, say goodbye, and I'll do it? Okay. Cool. Yeah. So thank you on that, because that comes back to relationship and just taking responsibility for our lives. So the questions we're going to leave you with, again, they'll be in the text underneath this recording, are 3 that I've got, and Laura, maybe you want to add on to them. This is what we discussed earlier. So it's around social impact, relationship, and responsibility with the label ceremonial grade. So some of the questions you can ask your supplier or your practitioner is, do they know either the farmers, the cooperative, or the people who process the cacao personally, or the reputable ceremonial grade cacao source, right? So just ensuring direct trade here and that relationship piece. That's the first question. Is there a direct relationship link? Second question is, do the farmers decide on the price, or is it dictated to them by the market, thereby making sure that they are fairly compensated for, right? So they actually have a say. And then the final question is, how much revenue actually goes back to the people who are actively involved in the harvesting, the processing, and the packaging of cacao?
And this is this is a question that, by the way, is very hard to answer, because we are living in a capitalist society, and unfortunately, even the most ceremonial grade cacao brands don't provide complete transparency. So by continue to ask these questions, we hopefully get there, that people start to open up.
Yeah.
Because I think this is very important. And unfortunately, even in my favorite brands, there's a lack of transparency sometimes there. So it's possible, and there are brands out there that are transparent, and we can foster them more and more. So, and last question I'm going to add, just to ask yourself, what are your core values, and are they represented in your consumption with ceremonial cacao and your buying of ceremonial cacao, or are they mirrored by the companies you are purchasing from?
So that's so strange, because I'm about to type the question here, but I couldn't hear any of that. Can you just repeat it, please?
Of course, yeah, of course. So what are your core values, and are they mirrored or represented by the brand or supplier that you are processing, that you're purchasing cacao from, and also in the way that you're consuming it? Because that comes back to the relationship with yourself, right, and your environment.
Nice. Yeah, because there's that context again, your core values.
The integrity piece. Yes.
And then cool. So just to highlight what you were saying earlier, to have these questions not only to ask your supplier or your practitioner, but your friends. Start these conversations like Laura and I are having now. Start these conversations with others that work with cacao. And just the ripple effect will be the impact that we actually needing at the moment for more awareness around this, and to protect this term ceremonial grade, so that we can continue to work from a place of right relationship, reverence, and integrity.
Thank you, Fran. See you next week.
Thank you so much. Any final words before we jump off?
No, I really need to go though, so I'm saying goodbye now.
Thank you so much, and thank you everybody. Send us anything in the comments if you want to have any questions answered.